What happens when beetles are locked in their own tiny world for 100 days? What happens when a small world is made inside a jar? We put a few beetles, some soil, and a little food. Then we close the jar. We watch for 100 days. We want to see if the beetles live. We want to see how they change. We want to see what small life does in a tiny home. This simple glass container becomes a universe in miniature, a sealed ecosystem where the rules of life and death play out on a small observable scale. The air inside is finite, the resources are limited. The journey we are about to witness is one of survival, adaptation, or perhaps inevitable collapse. It is a story told not in years but in days. The beetles are small, they move on the soil, they eat small bits of food, they dig and hide. On day 1, we meet the beetles. We observe them as individuals, noting their size, noting the unique patterns on their dark, glossy shells. They are darkling beetles, chosen for their hardiness, chosen for their relatively simple needs. We place 6 of them into their new home, a large glass jar, a deep layer of organic soil, a piece of dried leaf for cover, a small measured portion of grain, a sliver of apple. We put a camera on a tripod, its lens focused on the activity within. A digital counter is placed beside the jar, its red numbers glowing, 001. We start the clock on this small, isolated world. Close shot of their shells shimmering under soft light. We watch them eat. They approach the food cautiously, antennae twitching. One beetle takes the first bite of the apple. Soon, others follow. We note the food. A simple, controlled diet. The food is a lifeline and a variable. Time-lapse. The food begins to decompose. This decomposition will feed beetles and smaller soil organisms. The jar is sealed, small holes in the lid covered with a fine mesh, minimal air exchange to prevent CO2 buildup. A flurry of activity, quick montage. They investigate every corner of their territory. They climb the curved glass walls. They lose their footing. They tumble softly back onto the soil. They crawl over the dried leaf, exploring its brittle texture. One begins to dig, legs like tiny shovels, soil being pushed back, the start of a tunnel. This digging behavior is crucial. In these first hours, the jar is pristine, uniform dark brown soil, clear glass, fresh, untouched food. 6 dark shapes move with purpose. Slow motion macro of jointed legs moving in coordinated rhythm. They actively shape their environment, the first marks of their story. In the first week, the beetles explore relentlessly. The novelty of their environment has not worn off. They seem driven to map every inch of their glass-walled territory. Close-ups of antennae and legs probing the glass. They find the food source consistently now, gathering around the small pile of grain and apple. They eat in turns, sometimes nudging each other aside but with no real aggression. We see them digging extensive tunnels. The once smooth surface of the soil is now dotted with entrance holes. Some beetles hide under the soil for hours, disappearing from view completely. Others prefer the surface, on the glass, resting on the leaf litter. Small fleeting interactions hint at a complex social structure. One beetle uses its mouthparts to groom another. Close-up grooming. Precise cleaning. They clean their legs. They clean their shells. This is normal. It helps them stay healthy, but in this confined space, hygiene could become a matter of life and death. By day 7, the jar looks used. It has transformed from a sterile setup into a lived-in habitat. The soil has many tunnels, a miniature subway beneath the surface. The food is smaller, visibly diminished. Tiny dry droppings begin to dot the landscape. The first sign that the chemistry of this small world is changing. This is the smell of life, the smell of digestion and decay beginning its slow work. The jar is no longer just a container, it is an active ecosystem. Patterns emerge in their daily routines. During the day, under bright lab light, most remain hidden in tunnels. They are largely nocturnal. As we dim the lights to simulate dusk, the jar comes alive. One by one, they emerge from their burrows, forage for food, patrol the perimeter, interact with one another. This rhythm of activity and rest is fundamental. By day 10, a new element makes its presence known. The jar looks used. The soil is riddled with tunnels. The food supply is visibly smaller. The beetles continue their routines, but now they share their world with a new form of life. Small, delicate white threads appear on a forgotten piece of apple. This is fungus. It spreads slowly at first, a fine, almost invisible web. Fungus grows on old food. Fungus grows in moist soil, an ancient and powerful decomposer, a key part of the jar's emerging ecosystem. It helps break down waste. It helps break down uneaten food, recycling nutrients back into the soil. not necessarily a threat. In nature, fungi are essential. The cleanup crew. At this early stage, the beetles seem to ignore it. They eat the fresher pieces of grain. They avoid the fuzzy white patches. They move to drier parts of the jar, creating new tunnels away from the damp corner. For now, the system remains stable. But if conditions become too wet or food waste accumulates too quickly, the fungus could bloom explosively. A silent, creeping presence. A wild card in our experiment. As the weeks pass, we begin to watch their bodies more closely. The initial uniformity of the group has given way to individual differences. Some beetles look fuller, their abdomens rounded, others look thin, their movements more lethargic. We write down how many beetles we see on the surface each day. A simple census to track their activity levels. The numbers may fall. One morning, around day 22, we find a small, still body partially buried in the soil. The first death is a somber milestone, yet it is an expected part of the life cycle. In a small, closed world, each change is magnified. The loss of one individual from a colony of 6 is a significant event. We leave the body where it lies, resisting the urge to intervene. Nature must take its course. In this tiny ecosystem, death is not an end but a transformation. The body of the dead beetle will become a source of nutrients for the soil, for the bacteria, and for the ever-present fungi. We also watch diligently for signs of new life. Some of the healthier-looking beetles may lay eggs in the soil. The eggs are incredibly small and pale, almost impossible to spot, typically laid in damp, protected areas, hidden deep within the tunnels. These eggs may hatch in a matter of days or weeks, depending on the temperature and humidity. If they hatch, we will see tiny worm-like beetle larvae. They look nothing like the adults. Larvae eat different things, often preferring decaying organic material, the very waste products that are building up in the jar. If new beetles grow, the colony may find a way to sustain itself, a powerful sign of adaptation, proof that the beetles have not only survived but reproduced. If not, the number of beetles will only fall. The fate of this small society hinges on its ability to procreate. At day 50, the halfway mark of our experiment, the jar is a world transformed. The soil is dark and densely packed, webbed with an intricate network of tunnels. Tunnels no longer clearly visible from the surface. The glass walls are smudged with dirt and moisture, obscuring the view within. The air, if we were to open the jar, would feel stale and heavy. We measure the smell near the mesh lid: damp earth, fungal must, the faint, sharp scent of decay. The ecosystem has matured, for better or worse. The beetles themselves seem slower, more deliberate, yet some are still very active, especially at night. These beetles have established routines, preferred hiding spots, favored foraging areas. They have adapted to a world of tunnels and shadows. The initial frenzy of exploration has been replaced by the quiet, steady rhythm of existence. We maintain our simple log with unwavering discipline. Counts, sketches of fungal growth, moisture checks, searches for eggs or larvae. Our daily photographs, stitched into a time-lapse, reveal tunnels being dug, collapsing and being redug, mold spreading like a slow-motion bloom, beetles moving like small, dark shadows, a constant dance of foraging, hiding and resting. The time-lapse compresses 50 days of slow change into a few minutes of dramatic transformation. Around day 70, a clear divergence becomes apparent. We are running the experiment in duplicate with 2 identical jars set up at the same time. Now their stories are beginning to split. In one jar, which we will call Jar A, a fragile equilibrium has been established. The 4 remaining beetles still find enough food. They seem to have spread out, each claiming a small territory within the jar. The fungus is present. A small, controlled patch seems to help break down the oldest food waste without overwhelming the habitat. This jar shows adaptation. In Jar A, we finally see definitive proof of new life. Several tiny pale larvae wriggling near a piece of decaying leaf, no longer than a grain of rice. Their presence is a spectacular success. It means the original beetles not only survived, but thrived enough to reproduce. The larvae will now feed on the decomposing matter in the soil, filling a different ecological niche than the adults. This jar shows a system finding its balance. They have, against the odds, succeeded. In the second jar, Jar B, the story is much darker. The food we add is quickly consumed, or covered by a rampant greenish-black mold. The fungus in this jar is not a helpful decomposer, it is an aggressive competitor. Many of the beetles are weak and listless. We count only 2 survivors, rarely seen on the surface. We suspect they laid eggs, but the conditions in the soil, perhaps too wet, too acidic, or too depleted of oxygen by the mold, were not suitable for the larvae to survive. More beetles have died, their small bodies quickly consumed by the spreading mold. Jar B is moving toward collapse. A collapse means the beetles can no longer find enough food or clean space to live. The air quality has likely deteriorated significantly due to the unchecked growth of mold. The soil is saturated with waste products and fungal hyphae, becoming a toxic environment rather than a nurturing one. The tiny world has become too difficult to live in. In the final 3 weeks, the fates of the 2 jars are sealed. In jar A, the larvae grow. We can see them more frequently now, larger and more active, aerating the soil and breaking down waste. The 2 remaining adult beetles move slowly, their life's work seemingly done. They have successfully passed the torch to a new generation. The ecosystem inside jar A, while forever changed, is alive and functioning, a testament to the resilience of life. Beetles, larvae, fungi. The success of jar A seems to hinge on moisture control. The fungus never took over because the conditions were never quite right for it to explode. This may have been a matter of luck. Perhaps the initial placement of food, or the digging patterns of the beetles themselves, created a slightly drier environment, a space free from the suffocating blanket of mold. In stark contrast, jar B has fallen silent. By day 90, we can no longer find any sign of living beetles. The surface is almost entirely covered in a thick, velvety layer of dark mold. The once clear glass is now opaque with condensation and grime. The air inside is surely toxic, depleted of oxygen. The experiment in this jar has reached its conclusion. Total ecosystem collapse. On day 100, we stop the counter and make our final observations. The results are clear and profoundly different for each jar. Jar A shows life. We carefully open it. The smell is earthy and alive. Deep in the soil, a thriving family of beetle larvae, larvae of various sizes, and the 2 original adult survivors, a multi-generational colony. Jar B, however, shows only decay. The air is foul. The interior a monochrome landscape of mold. There are no survivors. Both outcomes teach us something vital. Balance matters. Food must be in equilibrium with population. Waste must be managed and recycled. Dry and wet areas provide refuge and choice. Fungus can be a helpful decomposer, or a deadly competitor. Reproduction is the ultimate measure of success.